present For the Record.
Welcome to For the Record. I'm Naomi Coles. 20 months in, the COVID strain on hospitals is worse than ever. A quarter of inpatient surgeries have been canceled or rescheduled at SSM Health's Monroe Hospital since November 22nd. This week, they let me inside for a rare glimpse into the rural crisis.
Very rarely do we see a vaccinated patient.
Behind 6 quiet ICU curtains, privacy laws mercifully protect from view the people who lay here in crisis. The people who stay here in crisis for days, weeks.
These patients do not improve overnight. They do not improve over days. It's weeks and weeks and weeks at a time.
If they make it out,
it's not as frequent as we would like.
They'll stay weeks more, months more in step-down facilities, living a new, harder life.
And if they do survive, they have a very long road ahead of them. Their bodies are very deconditioned because they've been in bed for weeks, if not months. They're getting fed through a tube in their stomach. They're breathing through a hole in their throat.
Monroe Hospital has 55 inpatient birth and ICU beds. Until recently, they avoided the surge larger hospitals experienced because they could send their patients to those larger hospitals. Now, those calls are coming the other way.
We're probably fielding 6 to 10 calls every day from other hospitals wanting to transfer into us.
A transfer they most often can't accept because, like everyone else, they're full. Starting in the 18-bed emergency room where overflow patients are kept while they wait.
We can take 4 ambulances at a time. Have seen that a few times recently.
It's midday here in the emergency department. Right now, there's 2 patients waiting on hospital beds upstairs.
Anywhere from 36 to 48 hours to get it. Yeah, we bring down a hospital bed out of the penthouse and we get them as comfortable as we can.
If it's ICU care, not inpatient, that's needed,
we would anticipate having to hold them until a bed opens up in ICU, and that can be days.
In times like that, hospital president Jane Curran-Malley says they're getting creative.
We've actually worked with our hospitals to do almost a 3-way trade.
Sometimes it may take 20 or 30 calls to get a patient to where they need to, depending on what's going on with them.
It's COVID cases driving the surge.
We're seeing more patients than we've ever seen during the pandemic related to COVID. And the community doesn't realize that.
Nearly half of their inpatient beds are dedicated to COVID patients. So what happens for other cases? Cancer, a car accident, the flu. Janelle Yagi works in the ICU and manages beds and departments across the hospital on weekends, especially when several come at once needing high-level care when the ICU is already at capacity. The juggling is a constant strain.
I've spent hours down in the ER trying to help manage ICU patients in the ER. Shuffling patients around to try to figure out who's the least sick that we could put this other patient, maybe occupy their room.
The birthing center may have to take some. Surgery staff may have to come to the ICU. Nurses have to make do in situations or departments they're not fully trained for. And the people themselves are coming in sicker.
I've seen patients who normally we would have caught a lung cancer very early come in at the final stages of lung cancer for the first time.
I ask, are they dying because of that delay?
Yes, because they kept thinking, oh, I shouldn't go in, this is just a cough, I'm fine.
There isn't a clear light at the end of the tunnel. As upstairs in the ICU, COVID patients battle for breath, a reality that the medical world is begging the outside to reckon with.
Prior to going on a ventilator, there's several of them that will just say, I wish I would have gotten my shot. I wish I would have gotten vaccinated.
And you can join me tonight at 10 o'clock as I break down the second part of the problem, the staffing shortage. When we come back, what unusual weather patterns this week tell us about a changing climate in Wisconsin? Welcome back to For the Record. This week, record-setting December high temperatures as we soared into the high 60s on Wednesday. That was followed by storms that you just don't often see this time of year. I am joined by our own Dana Fulton to explain what on earth is going on.
You really nailed it there. It was a lot over just the last few days. Things we don't usually see in December. The record high temperature in December in all of Wisconsin set in Boscobel at 72 degrees. In Madison, the daily high temperature record. The first time we've seen a tornado watch issued for all of Wisconsin in the month of December. And the first time we had tornadoes in Minnesota in December, the northernmost tornado in Stanley just outside of Eau Claire. So it was a very active weather day for us, but also a very unprecedented, if that word isn't overused too much at this point in time, with this event coming through.
It felt at times like we were covering summertime weather, summertime extreme weather instead of a snowstorm. So how do we go from these high temperatures into those storms?
Exactly. So the storms fueling that high temperature, that it pushes the warmer air in front of us. So all of this out to our west, we had severe thunderstorm warnings issued, the yellow there, the red, all of those tornado warnings. You can see how that lifts into Wisconsin, and that was all leading in front of the storm system as it came in. So we had that warm air in place, and we had, of course, all of those storms coming along with it, and then cooler air came down. And this is part of, I think, a bigger conversation for us, where we're seeing these warmer temperatures in the month of December, a little bit above average, and that warmer air can hold more moisture, and the more moisture that is available, the larger the storm is going to be.
Is there a conversation here about how climate change is impacting this? Is it driving these events, or is there some other explanation here?
There is perhaps not a direct correlation, but there absolutely is a connection there. We have seen strong weather events before. This is not something that hasn't ever happened. On record, it hasn't happened for us, but it's really the change in the frequency of how often we're seeing these massive events come through. As I was mentioning, the warmer the atmosphere is, the more moisture it can hold. That's why our hurricanes are able to get so big, because it is so warm and has all of that warm water out in the ocean. When we're seeing these warmer temperatures later in the season, it's giving us the opportunity to collect more moisture, have those bigger storms coming through, and see these big events come through in months where we usually don't see it happen. And in fact, the frequency here between these record-breaking events, it's decreasing with the number of days. The frequency is picking up, and the number of days between these billion-dollar damaging events, certainly seeing them become a lot more common.
What am I looking at exactly when I'm looking at these bars going up and down?
Yes, absolutely. So between our billion-dollar disasters, or between our major disaster events that come through that cause a significant amount of damage, when we look back to 1980, the days or the time span between them, you would have at least, an average of 100 days, an average of at least a third of a year, several months between these major events. And as we go from 1980 all the way through the 2010s, you can see the frequency there, the number of days between these events starts to decrease. So we're seeing a higher frequency in the magnitude of these events and the number of these events coming through. Again, that is really correlated with how warm the atmosphere is getting, how much more moisture the atmosphere can hold. It's creating these stronger storms, these damaging events. So we're seeing these events more frequently, and we're not having as much time, frankly, to get things cleaned up, get prepared again for the next one to come through. And if this continues on, things don't look good once you start to see the projections pushing out even further.
Which leads naturally to my last, and I mean, naturally the last question. What do we expect from the future? Does this keep happening more often, more severe?
At this rate, that's absolutely what the data and the science is pushing towards. The frequency of these events continuing to pick up, and the magnitude of these events coming through certainly seems to be hinting towards seeing them more frequently, seeing those 100-year flood events perhaps every 5 to 10 years, seeing these massive December storms perhaps every 5 to 10 years as well. Unfortunately, that is pointing in that direction.
Dana, thanks so much for hopping on, joining me this morning. As always, you can go to Channel 3000 for more on these conversations. Thanks for joining us today. Stay safe and healthy.
This has been For the Record.